Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. Join me as we have a real-life discussion on how to change your life by changing your thoughts. Remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth. Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. My name is Sloan Fremont, and I'm your host. This is a show where we talk about how to change our lives by changing our thoughts. And each week, I bring you new conversations with the intention to encourage you, to inspire you, and to hopefully change your perspective in a positive way to help you navigate your life in the direction that you really want it to go. And our topic today in my interview with our guest today really, I think, is going to inspire you to take a look at your life a little bit differently and hopefully encourage you to start moving in that direction that you really want to live your life. My guest today is Harold Harris Jr., and he's the author of From Basketball to Bow Ties, A Journey in Leadership, Self-Discovery, and Success Through Service. And in our interview today, Harold and I get into all kinds of topics. We talk about his book. We talk about the lessons that he learned growing up throughout his life. Harold and I have a lot of similar personality traits, so it's really fun to explore that with him and learn more about him and learn what he learned from his life lessons and his experiences. And one of the big things that was a theme that I found throughout Harold's book and something that he talks about today is living purposefully, and not only living purposefully, but living with that service to others attitude. Harold is such a positive person. The way he tells his story, the advice that he offers, and even as he talks about what he learned, I think you're really going to find a lot in this today. And I think that you're going to come at the other side of this interview feeling really inspired to do great things in your life. Joining me today is Harold Harris Jr., author of the book From Basketball to Bow Ties, A Journey in Leadership, Self-Discovery, and Success Through Service. This book is artfully composed of creative storytelling intertwined with lessons that are easily remembered and applied. Harold takes us through an inspirational journey of heart-wrenching life experiences that have developed him into an authentic, transformational leader, passionate about every aspect of life, and compassionate as demonstrated by his selfless gifts to others, from learning to tie a bow tie to giving the gift of life as a living kidney donor. So Harold, I want to welcome you to the show. I've been really excited to talk to you.
Sloan, thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. And I appreciate you taking the time. I know you have lots of guests that you interact with. And so I am very thankful for the opportunity to share this story. Yeah.
Yes, because your story is amazing. I read your book, and as I mentioned briefly before we were getting started, that as I was reading your book, I laughed a lot because there were so many similar personality traits between the two of us that I recognized, and I was like, I know what that's like. I've been through that, and you have a background in IT that you describe as an unconventional way of coming into IT, and I have the same very similar story in that way. Yeah. But before we start, let's tell the audience just a little bit about yourself and your book, From Basketball to Bow Ties.
It's a journey that's a bit autobiographical. Mm-hmm. It has some leadership lessons and nuggets that I've learned because I've been blessed with tremendous leadership throughout my 33-year career. Mm-hmm. It is a story about tragedy. It is a story about inner turmoil. It's a story about a young kid who just never quit, regardless of what it looked like, regardless whether it was a basketball trial, whether it was something tragically that happened in his family, or whether it was something that happened in business. He just never quit. But at the same time, very few of us, if any of us, get through life by ourselves. So it's also about the service and assistance from others. And it's just a journey that culminated in just an unbelievable circumstance. It really was. Because as we get more and more into this discussion, folks will find out. And as they go through the book, I didn't have my hand up to be an organ donor. That's not how it played out. So it's all those things, and it's a roller coaster. And I'm glad. I know that the story is not going to be, everybody may not like a particular book, and I get that. But I think what you said resonates because it does take you on a roller coaster. It's going to make you laugh. It's going to make you mad. It's going to make you cry. It's going to make you think. It's going to give you pause. And that was the purpose of the journey. I just wanted to tell part of my story in an ability to inspire others because we all have a purpose and call to action.
Yeah. And one of the things that I loved in your book too, you talk about how we're all on our own journey, right? We all have our individual story. And there's that theme of that is becoming so apparent to me lately as just things that I'm going through in my own life of how everybody has a story, everybody has a story to tell. And each of our journeys are so individualized that because we often try to fit in or we try to do things that maybe aren't for us, right? Or we don't even feel comfortable doing, but because we feel like it's what we should be doing, we try to do these things instead of just embracing our own path, going down our own path and doing things our own way, which is how I felt you described yourself in your book. You forged your own path. You did things unconventionally, and it seemed like you did them all with a smile, right? You went forward with your bow tie and your smile. And I loved that reminder of that resilience and also of that just that never quitting, especially when you were in the first part of the book about basketball. I mean, I played basketball when I was a kid. I didn't really get too far along into it, but your description of what you went through and the determination you had to me was very inspiring.
I appreciate that. And thank you. As I was writing the book, some of the things developed organically. So I would start down one path, and it just would evolve into, I don't know, I need to go this way. And then all of a sudden it bring back this flood of memories about a particular time, and that became content. Mm-hmm. But it didn't start out that particular way. So I like the organic journey and just one page at a time. And it just evolved into this story that I hope folks find enjoyable. But at the same time, I hope that they find actionable, because as I said in the foreword, the reason that I love the way the book evolved through some editing, lots of editing and lots of direction from Brandy Lane Publishing, who I give all the credit in the world to, because they are the publishing company that took a chance on me. Yeah. You think about, I didn't never stop to think about all of the steps that goes into publishing a book, because that will paralyze anyone. Right. I just wrote. I just started writing. I didn't go, I'm going to make it this long. I'm going to tell this story. I'm just going to write and let it organically evolve. And I think Brandy Lane Publishing understood what I was attempting to do. Yeah. And that is to share an inspirational and moving story that can resonate with anyone, regardless of their demographic. And that's what I also love, because I've spoken to organizations. I've spoken to middle schools. I've spoken to high schools. I've spoken to CEOs, CIOs. It doesn't matter the demographic. It doesn't matter if you're white, you're black, you're brown, you're 10 years old, you're 15 years old, you're 35 years old, you're 55, you're 60, you have 50 years of experience leading organizations. It resonates across there, because those lessons and those nuggets of leadership that I spawn in there are applicable to you and your experience, and uniquely yours. And that's what I really enjoy about the book.
Yeah. And the other part that I loved is, even if someone isn't interested in necessarily leading in a management type position, right? Or being something, managing other people, I felt like your book also helps people manage themselves, because we are our own leaders, right? We lead ourselves. And so being able to understand yourself, understand, who you are, what you stand for, right? And what motivates you, what doesn't motivate you. I also felt that as throughout your book was that it's a great call to personal leadership for within yourself as well.
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely spot on, Sloan. I think that being able to attach a particular lesson that I talk about in the story to someone's personal journey gives it that much more resiliency in being able to apply it. It makes it very easy to do. You can read other books. You can read a book and it just kind of goes right through you. You read it, you understand it, but does it resonate and does it stick to you? Yeah. Okay, that stuck to me. And the why is not important. It's the fact that you recognize that stuck with you. There's a reason for that. Yeah. And then examining that and then moving forward. So yeah, I think it does. And we're really excited about that and very proud of how it turned out.
Yeah. Well, and so your book goes through several leadership lessons. And what I thought we'd do today, I want to go through some of my favorites that I pulled out
Okay.
from the book. But before we
Okay.
get to that, I want to mention one other, something that stuck with me throughout your book was
Yeah.
where you talk about favor. And there
Yeah.
was, and so I want to get you to explain what favor is to you. But I
Sure.
also, one of my favorite quotes from your book, and this is something I talk about all the time on the show here, because the show is
Okay.
called Create What You Speak, right? We're talking
Right.
about, we bring into existence what we say. So if we're saying negative things, we're going to see more of that. Positive, we're going to see more of that.
Yeah.
In your
Yeah.
book, you say, and you're talking about when you were going to play basketball in college and the odds
Yeah.
were against you, right? This wasn't a conventional way to do this. And you
Yeah.
said, I simply spoke it into the atmosphere that I was going to play there. And that was all.
Yeah.
In your life, so I won't go into all the details of that, but so let's talk about favor, what that means to you and how that's shown up in your life.
Being Sloan, being an unapologetic Christian about the fact that we are here in service to others. And there is a reason for our existence that far exceeds what we think we should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
There is a higher power. So I'm unapologetic as a Christian. Favor to me is when something is bestowed upon you that is completely out of your realm of possibility to control, manipulate, and describe. It simply is God's way, in my opinion, in God's way of expressing that he is with you, that there is no obstacle. There is nothing that can happen to you. There's nothing someone can post about you. There's nothing that someone can do to you that can inhibit what he has ordained for Sloan Fremont.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If everybody in America and every news outlet said this is the most unbelievably bad show in the history of the universe, God has a way of navigating all of that to position Sloan Fremont to be the most successful when she's operating in his favor and doing the thing that he has purposed you to do. And so favor for me is understanding not only who I am, but
Mm-hmm.
understanding whose I am. And I'm not of this world where I have to follow what everybody else thinks I should be doing.
Yeah.
So that's where you get that favor and how it's just, wow, how did that happen to him?
Yeah.
How did he do that? Or how did she do that? How did she begin to host this national show? How did that happen for her?
Right.
But they don't see everything that goes on.
Right.
They don't see that. So that's favor to me.
Yeah. And what I also like about favor, and even just using that word, is the recognition of it when it happens in your life, right? Because sometimes it's very easy to go through life and, oh, I'm just prone to bad luck, or, oh, I'm prone to good luck, right? Or, but when you have that recognition of, in like in this quote, you spoke it out there, and there's power in that. There's power in that, personal power by taking that. There's power in the recognition of the favor, I think. And so when you mentioned that throughout your book, that was one of my favorite parts of when you would mention that, how your recognition of that, because it's like, once you see that, then you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
That's how it feels to me.
It's with you. It is absolutely with you. There is just no way a young guy, 23 years old, that has never looked for a job and that just falls into his lap, and to be able to have that situation fall in such a manner that created an opportunity where I spent the last 32 years.
Right.
I was a public administration and a political science major with a minor in economics, but I'm working in healthcare IT. Really go figure that, because the service to others. So it really is an intriguing story. And the other one that I really enjoyed was, we talk about when I was on the 12-mile run and I really wanted to quit.
Yeah.
And just what came to me was decide, do, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
Don't even get caught up in everything else. Just decide. And that, as a young person, I fell in love with the school. James Madison University is just a beautiful school, and it looks nothing like it looked when I went to school there 33 years ago. I mean, they have another campus on the other side of the road. It's just absolutely beautiful. It was beautiful back in 1989, when I went. But it is just amazing what they have done. I just love the energy, and I felt at home there. So I just made a decision. Okay, I'm not looking at other schools. I'm going to play here. And I'm just not taking no for an answer. So,
Right. Yeah. Well, and so your direction, your entrance into IT, as you said, that's as you were mentioning just a second ago about your job and not having any experience. And your book goes into the story behind that. And I thought it was very well written, the Marriott photo, how they were standing in there. And so the listeners will have to read the book to get that part. But I had a similar experience in that my background was actually one of my degrees was in agriculture.
Okay.
But I've worked in IT I think I'm going on 12 years now. And for me, how that started was it was actually learning about blogs and learning how to program, because back then, I mean, this was in the early days, like when people used, Typer or Word. I don't even remember what it was called. It was like one of the original blogging platforms.
Sure.
And at that time, I had actually gotten fired and laid off multiple times. And I know you have a similar story about being fired. And honestly, I think everybody should be fired once in their life to be humbled by that, because honestly, for me, it was one of the best experiences that I went through, learned so much about myself. But so during that time, I had a lot of time on my hands. And so I was teaching myself, okay, if I do this, then that happens. If I do this, then that. And from that, I started to understand more and I was read, and I would be very, interested in this. And I had a lot of time, right? Because I wasn't working, and you can only apply for jobs so many hours a day. And so I was teaching myself this stuff, and I was learning about projects and project management, and I would talk to people. So what do you do? How does this work? And they would give me insight, and I'd be like, okay, that sounds really interesting. And so long story short, I got into consulting, kind of the same way I didn't have any consulting experience, but I had the interest, I had the determination, and I had the willingness to learn. I was willing to be taught. And so here I am, 12 years later, still working in the same industry. And I felt that in your story too. You had definitely had the drive by your experience through basketball and what that taught you and all your different coaches. You had the determination because you were in the midst of losing your other job. And so that's it. You've got to get, there's no really, you got to get another job. And then also that willingness to be taught. And throughout your book, you thank the people who've taught you. You talked about the people and what you learned from them and what kind of people they were. And I think that really helps the reader to understand the different personalities that help to shape you. Because as I was reading that, I was also thinking about people in my life, like people who I've worked with, mentors I've had, and what qualities that I really admired by them, and those defining moments like that with those people that help propel me forward. I thought that was really interesting how you did that.
Yeah, it's a tribute to them and the recognition that we are not alone and we don't get there. And if you think you pull yourself up, I use that in the book, By Your Own Bootstraps, think again, because it's just not accurate and it's just not true. There are people that took a chance on me, some young guy that didn't have a clue, he's just trying to find his way. And that also makes me a very compassionate leader.
Yeah.
So one of the greatest things you can have as a leader is for people that you help get started, come back to you years later.
Yeah.
That is a goosebump, seminal, and very visceral moment for me. When sometimes folks call me up and say, "Hey, I'm working for, the government and I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And I really appreciate you helping me figure out what it is that got me out of bed in the morning because we're doing X." And, it may be 10, 15, 20 years ago, or someone helping, sending you a nice note or an email saying, "Hey, I'm in town. Just want to let you know I'm out of here. I've been in Texas for the last 20 years, but I just want to thank you for getting me on this path." That is as good as it gets as a leader.
Yeah.
It really is. It doesn't get any better because our primary responsibility as leaders, and we all are leaders, regardless of your position or stature, you are a leader, is to be able to serve others in a capacity that far exceeds anything that you thought that they're supposed to do. And when you help somebody operate and get into their lane, and this is the part of favor that we talked about, is being in your lane and knowing that, okay, I know why I'm here.
Yeah.
And most people, Sloan, don't know why they're here.
Right.
They think it's to work a job or to be an athlete or to be this or to be that. That is not why you're here. And if you don't know, I love the fact that this book can move you to help you realize what that is, because a lot of people simply go through life existing.
Yeah.
And, I believe that he put me here to serve others and inspire others to find their true purpose in life. I truly believe that. And
Yeah.
whether it's the spoken word, the written word, a presentation, a speech, or demonstration, that's why I'm here. And I love that, because when you know why you're here, that makes you unshakable in so many aspects of your life.
It does. And that just existing, I often refer to it on the show as living life on the sidelines.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're living on the sidelines, watching everybody else. Because I went through periods of my life like that. And I was like, enough is enough, right? This isn't living. This isn't the purpose of my life. And for me, that fired me up, right? That got me motivated. That got me like, wait a minute. No, why am I just sitting here waiting? What am I waiting on? I'm waiting for myself to get motivated, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I want to move into some of the leadership lessons, because you sprinkle them throughout the book. They've all in pretty much all, I think all of them have personal anecdotes that have went with them, which again, the best way to learn something is to, listen to another story about it. So I listed a couple of my favorites out here that I thought we'd talk through. So one of the first ones was leadership lesson number 6. Unchecked and unresolved anger can ruin relationships and organizations.
Yeah.
And this one was a big one for me because I don't know why. It seems like anger early on was often a first response for me. That's often where I went, was just anger / annoyance. So I know you went through a lot, especially when you were growing up with your parents, with things that you experienced at school. What would you say anger has taught you?
Anger has taught me I understand what anger is now. Mm-hmm. Anger is a secondary emotion.
Yeah.
And it's not a primary, it's a secondary emotion. And it is God's way of telling you that something is not right internally.
Yeah.
Not with anybody else, not with the circumstances. It's like, what's going on with me and you?
Yeah.
And recognizing the fact that it was also in my existence for me to survive. It was a survival mechanism that I used to navigate and fight through not quitting.
Yeah.
So even though it was a negative emotion and it has negative consequences, I used it to fuel me.
Yeah.
To keep moving. That rationale is not something that I want to take into the rest of my 60 years on the planet, because I'm just going to live till I'm 110 and we're going to call it that. So, but understanding what it is and how to use it was paramount. And I would say anger now, the recognition of what anger is the most important. Yeah. Everyone gets angry. Everyone gets happy. Everyone gets sad. Everyone gets melancholy. But it's understanding what the emotion is and how best to use it for the good, as opposed to sitting in it and simply just being angry. Yeah. There is a difference between, I was a very angry kid. I was angry that my mom died. I was angry that my parents didn't do what they were supposed to do. And I was angry that I was at my grandma. I was just angry.
Yeah.
As a kid, you don't know how to express that.
Right.
Well, I found outlets to express that, not realizing that I was using them as outlets to express that anger. I was just trying to survive.
Right.
And so as you get older, sometimes I recognize, I see what that is. That's anger. All right, I know what to do with that. Now we've become a little bit more mature. And that's a level of growth and maturity that we all go through.
Yeah. And that anger, as you talk about in your book, even with basketball, with as you were going through, and again, I don't know all the basketball terms. I know there are certain ways of explaining these things, but I don't know them. But
it's all right.
As you were, you were in let's talk about when you were at JMU, when you had decided that you were going to go there, right? And you were the walk-on, and the drills that you had to go through, the repetition, the being the freshman, all of these different things that you go through, and I think you even mentioned in your book about how those, like the hazing or whatever you went through, as in college, that was teaching you how to manage your anger. It was teaching you how to deal with that. And I just think that, at least for myself, like just as I was reading that, I was really looking back at my own life about what does anger mean to me and what have I learned from it? Because I think that's something I'm still learning, to be honest.
Yeah, we all are. I am too. It is.
Yeah.
It is. The hazing that took place at Benedictine, where I went to high school, that prepared me for the onslaught of JMU
Mm-hmm.
and what it took to push past that, because there is nothing like not being wanted
Yeah.
and not being a secret,
Yeah.
as opposed to, well, I think I got a shot. No, they made it very clear. We don't want you. What? Why are you here? So there was no hidden agenda. And I like that because it's right in front of you. It's unambiguous, and you simply know what it is. Okay, I see what it is. It's your will and my will. And we're just going to go. And I'm just going to keep going, and I'm going to outwork you. I'm going to outwork these guys that have scholarships. I'm going to be the guy that gets on the floor. I'm going to be the guy that watches more film. I'm going to be the guy that runs faster in the drills. I'm going to be the guy that does the grunt work. I'm going to be the guy that never complains. I'm just going to be the guy that does things. And at the end of that, when you're sitting over there trying to figure out, how is this guy still here? Well, let's see. He does this, he does this, he does this. They don't do that. They don't do that. They don't do that. He's always got a smile on his face. He's always got the right attitude. I can tell him something one time. I really want to get rid of this guy, but I can't. And I want to put him in that position, that situation. So yeah, I do.
Yeah. Well, in that, so that straightforwardness, I mean, at least you know what to do with it, right? There's no, okay, this is what I can do. And you even talk about in your book about that, having that more straightforward personality. And yeah. I have the same. And I've been told over the years in my jobs that, I'm too abrasive, I'm too straightforward, I'm too to the point, right? Yeah. And, but I didn't understand it any other way, because I was like, well, but why wouldn't you want to know the facts of the situation? Why wouldn't you want to know, whatever? So that's something I really had to work on myself too, was managing my own straightforwardness / abrasiveness to still be myself, but soften to people. I think that's been
we share that, and we both own it.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. I do not waste time. I get right to it. And it's funny because I mentioned that in like page 1. It's like, okay, I'm page 1, sentence 1. I'm letting you know right now, because for me, it just doesn't make sense. This passive aggressive, being able to communicate passive aggressively is just a complete waste of time to me. If you don't like something, say it. If you have a feeling about something, speak it. And you can do it in such a way. My issue that I'm continually a work in progress on is my delivery. Yeah. Because that can be very, I won't call it, I can just be very direct. Yeah. And if my directness upsets your delicate sensibilities, you're going to have a problem with me. Yeah. If you're confident in who you are, we're just going to be having a conversation. Yeah. And we're not going to take it personally. I know it's not meant to, it's just like, no, I think that's a dumb idea. Why would you want to do that? Let's talk about that. Yeah. And you're going to get offended. And it's not me trying to offend you. It's just that organizations lose so much what I call momentum. Yeah. When they're trying to move in a particular direction because of delicate sensibilities and their inability to communicate plainly, transparently, and directly. Yes. If the organization is in trouble, speak it. Let's go out and figure out a way to get out of it. Don't simply try to, we're not, we haven't. No, the organization is in trouble. Here's what we need to do to rectify it. Let's go. You don't hide that from people. You share it with them, because hiding it and not being transparent creates additional anxiety. And who wants that? Yeah. Well, and people can read that. And, I've been in, like I said, 12 years now, I think, in IT, and I did a lot of consulting, a lot of like short projects here and there, and a lot of longer ones too. And the thing is every company has that exact same problem. Everyone thinks they're different, but every single company has that exact same problem. And so then it just becomes, it used to bother me, and it used to, oh my gosh, but then I got to where I'm like, I'm just used to it. And now I know myself enough to know my responses, because the problems are all the same. I've just learned how to respond better and to not, take it, use my directness in a positive way, I guess. That's something I've been really, really working on. Yeah, that's good. Sometimes for me, it's the best thing to say is absolutely nothing. Yeah. Yes. I agree. I've learned that one too. Yep. Let it float on by and just leave it where it is. And if you have to, just give it pause. But yeah, that is a constant learning process for me. It absolutely is. But what other
Well,
quotes, what other nuggets you have that you like?
okay, so another one is number 11. Don't let the root of bitterness to enter your heart as a person or as a servant leader of others.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's a sneaky one
Yeah,
because bitterness has a way, and I'm not immune. I've had these issues. That's why I write about them, and
right.
I like being vulnerable about that. And a lot of folks have talked about. I really enjoyed how vulnerable
Yeah,
you were in the book, and for me, I appreciate that. But it is what it is.
yeah,
And it is such a sneaky, sneaky trait because it will infiltrate you and you don't even realize it. And the
right.
next thing you know, it's just your outlook on how you see things, how you see people, how you see circumstances can take you down a path that is an absolute untruth.
Yeah, I
Because,
totally agree with you. And I feel like bitterness shows up. It can feel like it's different things. It can feel like sometimes it's exhaustion. It can feel like sometimes it's uh victim, poor me. Why is it always happening to me? Or why don't I ever get this good thing or whatever? And
yeah,
that bitterness in personal and in business, it's like it puts up a block, right? It's like you're walking around with like a block in front of you or something that's or the maybe blinders is a better way to describe it. Like you can't see anything other than what that bitterness has taken
yeah,
hold of.
yeah.
And I know it can be tough on depending on your work environment or what's going on in your life. But I really loved this one, the reminder of watching out for that and not letting it enter your heart as a person or
Yeah.
a leader.
Yeah. Yeah, it does because it has the ability to destroy the very thing that you were trying to create because
Yeah.
you can't see what it's doing. It's almost like someone that's a very close friend and you've known them all your life and you're watching them go through something and you can see it just as
Yeah.
plain as day. It's like, wow, they're really when you no, I'm not, no, I'm not. Yes, I can
Yeah.
see it.
Mm-hmm.
I can see how you're behaving. I can see how you're rationalizing. I can see the lack of reasoning because you can't see what the truth is.
Yeah.
And that's what bitterness does. It blinds you from the truth because we may be having people and situations that are trying to help us.
Right.
But because of the bitterness, we think, why is she trying to sabotage me? Why did she say that in the meeting? Or why did they do this?
Right.
Or why did they do
Right.
this? No, she was really trying to help you, but because you're so angry and bitter, you think that she's trying to sabotage you.
Right.
Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And well, and that leads to the next one. Number 8, sometimes your leadership path will unfold organically before your eyes. And you talk about not dismissing the unfamiliar. And I think that ties into what you were just saying too, because we often think we're on this path, whether it be in our career, our life in general, whatever. It's going to unfold this way. It's going to be this neatly laid out, map, like a game board where you just move to the next. And that's not it at all. Right. And so we can miss these things. We can miss these, as I mentioned earlier about being fired. And I know you went through it as well. And we can take that firing as, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get a job again and it's the end of the world. Or we can take that firing as, wait a minute, okay, this is an opportunity for me to redirect. Maybe that was saving me from something further down the line, right? And so that reminder that your path doesn't have to be laid out each step at a time. It can be different and it can be unfamiliar, and that's okay.
It is absolutely okay. And for me, that has actually been a struggle because I'm so task oriented.
Yeah.
And I am a driver and I'm also, I compartmentalize things very well. And I can get so myopic in my view because I'm fixated on a direction. I can miss out on some of the things that would actually help that progression and the next level of where it is that I'm ultimately trying to go. Sometimes I drive right past it.
Yeah.
Because I'm so focused. And so it's being able to tie those things in and learning from them. But as I watch people sometimes navigate their careers and, the political white collar survivor that I call it in the book, that's just flat out exhausting. And I have no desire to do that. I don't recommend it. Folks still are going to play the game because they think it's the way to get ahead. At the end of the day, for me, it's not. And so for me, I'm not chasing position. I'm not chasing title. I'm not chasing money. I'm not chasing Instagram followers. I'm not chasing likes on Facebook. Don't have a Facebook account. So if you see Harold Harris, It's not me. I don't have a Facebook. I have to put that out there, right?
Yeah.
I am chasing purpose.
Yeah.
And to me, purpose far exceeds, Sloan, anything else. The other stuff will come.
That's right.
The other stuff will come.
That's
and
right.
if I keep serving others and giving and trying to help other people, the universe will open and do exactly what it's supposed to do when it's supposed to do it. And I have to trust that, which is sometimes been a struggle for me. I must confess, trusting and just.
I totally agree.
It does.
It does. I mean, and it takes practice. I mean, even if you've done it before, sometimes, the next day you may not be able to do it again, right? It takes constant practice and that willingness to do that. I want to move into that about service and your kidney donation and that moment for you when you found out you were a match and that whole experience for you. What was that like? And I guess maybe before that, what does servant leadership mean to you, and why is that so important?
It is simply, Sloan, how I was raised.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about in my professional space as well. Mostly in my professional space. My first managers and leaders and directors, and they were people that genuinely cared about others. Mm-hmm. They weren't just a boss. I don't particularly like the term boss, and I let my team know. I have 23 highly skilled folks who really don't need me. They don't need me because they know what they're doing, and 6 different teams. And I made it very clear, and the people that I've always led or been asked to lead, I take that very seriously. So I don't aspire to the parent-child relationship style of management. Yeah. And I don't like the word boss because I don't like what it denotes. I know that we all have one. We have someone that we are accountable to. I get that, and I am good with that. And at the end of the day, when my leader says, I need you to go right, don't ask me any questions, I'm going to go right and not ask any questions. I get that. But when you talk about servant leadership, you have to understand, as a servant leader, you are placing yourself in a position whereby to extract every single fiber of the brilliance of the people that you are responsible for. That has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them.
Yeah.
And when you put that hat on, you can lead in such a way where they organically and enthusiastically will follow you because you have given them something that is a bedrock foundation, and that is the level of trust.
Yeah.
If they trust you, you can move mountains. Whatever the team, whatever the industry, whatever the organization, if you have been placed in a position of leadership and the folks that are in your care don't trust you, it doesn't matter that you're the messenger. It doesn't matter that you're brilliant. It doesn't matter that you got the greatest idea since sliced bread. They will not commit to you.
Right.
And what you will see is a spiky issue of their performance because you are not getting the extraction of what I call positive discretionary effort. Mm-hmm. We talk about that in the book. So
yes,
that's what servant leadership means to me.
Well, and that servant leadership, what you're talking about, as you're talking, to me, it's pulling out of somebody rather than pushing down on somebody. And there's a big difference there from both ends of the spectrum. But I think everyone listening, I'm sure, has had that leader, that mentor, that person in their life that has pulled something out of them, as you talk about, help them see their own greatness, see themselves. And those kind of moments, and even as you recapped in your book, those are life-changing moments. They're memorable moments. They're those experiential moments when things aren't a concept. We've done them. We've lived them. We've experienced them. And that's how I think behavior changes also, in confidence, because you're more confident in yourself because you've had that experience. Yeah,
it is remarkable. Even when I think about it, Sloan, now when I think back on it 33 years later, how instrumental my first 2 leaders were.
Yeah.
They taught me how to manage time. They taught me how to write. And some people would argue that I'm still learning how to write, and I would not disagree. They taught me the value of how to use an analogy to tell a story. They taught me the value of storytelling. You might not remember all the facts, but I guarantee if I tell you a story, you're going to remember the story.
Yes.
So being able to take a story or a situation, use it anecdotally to create something where folks go, Oh, yeah, yeah, I remember that. And
Yeah.
years later, they still remember it.
Yeah.
That's been invaluable to me. But the greatest thing that I really admire from the leaders that I had, the Chesters and the Tommies and the folks that helped me, is they were compassionate leaders.
Yeah.
They cared. You saw it. They displayed it. It wasn't this, okay, I got to do this job, check in the box. It was none of that. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, may want to consider, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what we're doing here. Let's figure out how to, they genuinely cared. And I am so grateful for them because
Yeah.
I try to pass that on to the folks that I am now responsible for. So it's just been a natural progression in those those formative years of
Yeah.
my working adult life. Those first 3 to 5 years were huge for me because I had people that genuinely cared because I was so young, because I didn't know, anything about telecommunications or how to do certain things and having to learn them. You need that. And I think it's
Yeah.
important. It's been critical. It's been critical.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on the end of our time, and I don't want to miss this point about, as I asked earlier, about the kidney donation, because that's such a big
Yeah.
thing. So tell us about that.
So the kidney donation thing, it was how it started was, Ruben, the recipient, he came to me, and he said, I'm not sharing this story with a few people, with a lot of people. I just want you to know because we've, worked together for a lot of years, and I value you, and I just want you to pray for me. I need my kidneys are failing, and I need a kidney transplant, and so just pray for me. And that's what I did. I said I was devastated when he told me. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And so that's what I agreed to do. And we all thought that was going to be the end of it.
Yeah.
And a heaviness, and not a detrimental heaviness, but I think it was the Holy Spirit. And he sat on me and just said, you know what? I'm going to stay here for a couple of days, 3, 4 days, because it just stayed with me.
Yeah.
And I put my wife in a very difficult position. I want to be very candid. My wife, Cynthia, has been great. She's been a rock. But when I went to her, I said, you know what? I think I'm supposed to donate a kidney, and I think God is telling me to do it. That makes it very hard for her to say no.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah.
from that, I want to make sure that I'm transparent about that, because that's a very selfish thing to put your spouse in a position. But that's how I felt. It wasn't because I was trying to leverage an answer out of her. It's like, I really believe, we're both Christian, and we're both Christians, and we are, we know we are led by a higher power. And so we talked through it. And she said, well, okay, why don't you just, let's go get tested. And so that's what we did. And we started down that road. Now, I can tell you, and for the listeners, if you ever want to get a physical exam that is going to be the best physical exam you can ever get, just sign up. Sign up. I didn't say donate. Sign up to become a living donor.
Mm-hmm.
Every exam, they measure your heart. They measure your lungs. You have a psychological exam. They measure every blood work, and they find things that you would have never found in a routine exam. I mean, just blood work, every possible test that you can imagine, you are going through over the course of that 45 to 60 days. Mm-hmm. It is extensive. It is thorough. It's not like just take blood work and we'll get back to you. No, It's extensive, and it was exhausting. And so we did that. And then we were in a waiting phase, and I was in my office. I never forget it. Sloan, I was in my office, and my phone rang on my mobile phone, and it was our Maureen, our clinical coordinator for transplant. And at this time, going through the process for 60 to almost 90 days, going through all the testing and going back and visits and taking samples and doing all this stuff, I found out that Ruben had hundreds of people that tried to be a donor. His wife, his children, his church, other people. And we had an internal colleague who was a match. And what happened was she got right down to, she was almost done. She was 99% about to cross the finish line. And they found a cyst on her kidney in her final visit before prepping.
Oh my gosh.
It ruled her out. So if you can imagine going through the process, you go through all the testing, all the blood work, all the stuff, and you are ready, and your tissue typing is a match. You are a physical and an anatomical match. And then it's like, Sloan, you can't do it. We found something on your kidney and it rules you out. And so that happened. And so when she called me, she said, "You're a match." That's all she said. She didn't say, "I got great news." She said, "You're a match." Sloan, when she said that, I dropped my phone. I physically dropped my phone. I ran to my door and I slammed it. I didn't close it gently because I was all composed. I was not composed.
Yeah.
I slammed the door and I just started crying and bawling because I was so excited for Ruben, because I knew all of the people who were not a match.
Yeah.
And I think the emotions of the moment of being able, and the excitement and the joy to know that, okay, you might be able to save a life. No, you can save his life. You can help him. You can serve. You can be a solution. That was overwhelming for me.
Yeah.
But that wasn't even the most overwhelming part. Here is what the most overwhelming part was. The years previous to that moment, I was a heavy smoker. I loved cigars. I was a more than casual drinker. And he was cleaning me up in preparation for that.
I was reading in your book when you described that part of that, and that, again, that realization of that, right? That realization in that to me, that was a big part of the story too. And I wanted to hear more about that. Actually, that's why I wanted to talk to you about it today, because that was a big deal. And so, and how did Ruben react? Did you get to tell him, or did they tell him?
You know, they told him, because what we agreed that we were not going to say anything until we knew for sure.
Okay.
So while I was going through the process, he didn't know I was going through the process. And I wanted to say, you know what, if I'm not a match, then no harm, no foul.
Right. He doesn't get his hopes up.
When we know, then they told him. And what he shared with me was, because I'm such a fitness enthusiast, I love, working out, staying fit. I do that all year round. It's just part of my DNA. He shared with me that the doctor said, "Dude, you're getting an Olympic kidney." So it wasn't, so it's just been my body was in such tremendous shape in preparation for that the kidney started working immediately during surgery. And they said that really doesn't happen. They could see it working immediately. When they connected everything they need, it just started working for him. And so I was just thrilled. It's just a tremendous, watching him now bounce around like a 12-year-old kid is awesome.
I'm sure. And that's also an amazing testament to the body and the healing that, we put our bodies through various things, and it can change. And oh boy, Harold, this has been such an amazing conversation. Unfortunately, we're at the end of our time. I wanted to ask you about the bow ties, but I think the listeners are going to have to read about that in your book, because I really loved your story about that.
About that one? Yeah, they got to read that one. They got to.
Yeah, that's really good. So my guest today has been Harold Harris Jr., author of the book From Basketball to Bow Ties: A Journey in Leadership, Self-Discovery, and Success Through Service. So Harold, before we close out, what do you hope people learn or take away after reading your book?
I would like for them to share it with others. And again, not because of anything other than letting people know that they have power to make a difference.
Yeah.
Everyone wants their books to do well. This for me it's more than that. I want people to know that they have a place here in this world if they serve others through their gifts and talents that have already been bestowed upon them. They can do exactly what they want to do and be awesome in what they do. I would love for folks to just take away the message about the book and sharing it with someone else. Our social media. I love sharing, Sloan, the fact that I would love for folks to go to FromBasketballToBowties.com. The reason I try to connect people to the site is because I can tell you, Sloan, buy my book. It's out there on Amazon. It's out there on Barnes and Noble. I do a disservice when I tell you that, because you don't understand the why. Yeah. I want people to understand the why, and the why gets them to understand the context. So when they read it, it solidifies what they are going to do even more. If they just read it and don't understand where it came from, how it came into existence, and what we're doing, it doesn't connect all the dots. So that's why it's important. We have, our email service at source1.com, as well as our Instagram is Source1 LLC. And our Twitter handle is at Source1RVA, at RVA.
Got it.
And
okay.
so, we really do a lot on LinkedIn as well with posting, and hopefully, your media outlets can help us get the message out and the spirit. And even if one of the last messages, Sloan, even if someone chooses not to be a living donor, I understand that. But how about checking the box on your driver's license to say, if something happens to me, use my organs to save someone else's life? That's just as valuable.
Yeah.
And, you're serving in a different capacity. So if we can get folks to think about that, the power of organ donation, the power of serving others, and the power of their own innate abilities that are already inside of them, I think we've done exactly what we set out to do.
I love it, Harold. I love the message. I love your book. Thank you for your vulnerability and in telling your story. And thank you for coming on with us today. I'm going to put all the links in the show notes that you mentioned so the listeners can find that. And again, Harold, I want to thank you. It's been such an amazing conversation.
Sloan, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I appreciate Lynn getting all the stuff squared away and what you're doing. And I think this is awesome. I really feel the connection. And thank you so much, because there are a lot of other folks you could have had on this show. And so I thank you. And to the folks that are listening, you are here. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Don't let anyone else tell you differently, and go and be the best that you can be.
I love it. Thank you, Harold.
Yes,
You've been listening to the Create What You Speak podcast, brought to you by webtalkradio.net. You can also hear the podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and your favorite podcasting platform. I'm Sloan Fremont, and I hope you'll join me for the next episode of the Create What You Speak podcast, where we will continue to free our minds, expand our consciousness, and untangle those thoughts and patterns that keep us from living the life we desire. Check out my website, sloanfremont.com, to learn more.